high quality, world-class research tools that they can use themselves and that can be also used collectively. And then our third pillar is advocate. Obviously, we need to advocate for organizations and collectively advocate together to drive more resources to community-driven development, especially for us right now, where our focus is on girl-serving organizations delivering agency for adolescent girls. And we really believe that these three pillars are critical. We have to bring all of those pieces together in order to really demonstrate the effectiveness and impact and transformational change of girl-serving community-driven organizations. Next slide, please. And I'm going to share a little bit about our latest priorities and successes. So next slide. So I'm going to jump in and share some updates from our most recent work on girls agency. So as I mentioned, in 2019, our partners decided that they wanted to measure girls agency, and simply put, a girl's ability to affect change in her own life or community. And our partners, along with our research leads, spent 2 years co-creating this tool across multiple different contexts, multiple different countries. And so where we landed is agentic capacity is comprised of a combination of self-beliefs, beliefs about the environment, and skills and attributes needed to affect change. So over the last year, we did a longitudinal research study on girls agency with our partners. The tool is validated specifically for our partners in those 4 countries currently. And some interesting aspects arose from that work. So to maximize impact on girls agency, our study suggests that programs should engage in regular, sustained, and medium touch program delivery with focused content on girls agency. And medium touch would be, let's say, like once a week is how we define medium touch. Consider program durations longer than 3 months. Our analysis indicated that every additional month of programming after 3 months yielded increases in agency gains. And what we also found, happily, is that on average, with our partners, they were increasing girls' agency, whether it be low, medium, medium high, or high touch programs. Next slide. So what are we going to do with this research? So we have the Girls Agency Lab. It's a new effort of ours where we want to take this currently validated tool for our partners and validate it across 5 different countries to make it an open source tool for organizations in Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, and Malawi. Next slide. So how are we going to do this? So we're recruiting partners across those 5 different countries. We will be adding at least 20 partners to the Amplify Girls Collective over the next couple of months. We will be going through a rigorous validation process in partnership with ICRW and a variety of other partners across the region, where we will, as I mentioned, be validating it for multiple organizations. We will also be building an online self-service platform so that it is open source to everyone who wants to use it, where you will be able to upload your data and your agency score will magically appear. And so that's creating equal access to the tool and its results. But critical to this aspect is using the results to improve girls programming. We want to continue, we really are focused as an organization on moving research into practice. How can we take this research and really help organizations improve implementation, continue to share promising practices around girls agency, recognizing that it's going to be contextually different. Girls agency is going to, program interventions are going to be different in different communities. But our goal is to be able to create a community where we're able to have those conversations that is data and research driven. And next slide, I'm short and sweet and catching us up on time. So I will share a link to our longitudinal agency report and chat after this. We welcome also, I'll share a link for everyone who is interested in talking more about girls agency. We welcome you to join our working group on girls agency, visit our website, join our newsletter to learn more about how we function as an organization and how we're pushing this agenda alongside, our agenda around driving more resources to community-driven organizations. Please learn more about us there. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And that's it for me. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And please put any Q&A in the chat box. I see several people applauding. Thank you for the wonderful work you do. Just toggling between screens. Jennifer, if you'd like to introduce the next speaker, please go ahead.
Sure, thanks. And yeah, absolutely, Margaret, we put the link in the chat to amplifygirls.org. And please do see if you could reply in the chat. Great question from Marie in terms of what does it take to become a member of Amplify Girls? And huge thank you to Miriam and all presenters for continuing to share resources and ideas in the chat box as well. So with that, we're really excited to, follow up to the debrief we did across the Global Campaign for Education Family from the UN Transforming Education Summit and the UN General Assembly, or UNGA, closing out that jam-packed week at the end of September, just a few short weeks ago, was the Global Citizen Festival. And so we're really thrilled to be able to hear from our colleague, Zain Nasser, who's the education lead at the Global Citizen, to share a little bit more about some of those new commitments and the advocacy across the Global Citizen family on education across US government policymakers and related topics as we plan together for upcoming advocacy moments. But really well done, and thanks for joining us today to share some of those highlights. Over to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Let me just quickly share my screen here. Oh, whoops. Okay, so as you all know, sorry, 3 weeks ago, we had our Global Citizen Festival. We're just wrapping up the month. It was our 10th anniversary festival in New York. And we also had a simultaneous show happening in Accra. We had a lot of exciting education moments and commitments, but I just briefly wanted to kick off with filling you in on what we accomplished in general. The Global Citizen Festival culminated in $2.4 billion to end extreme poverty, with more than 440 million of that earmarked exclusively for initiatives to end extreme poverty in Africa. More than $800 million was announced on our stage, while an additional 1.6 billion was announced by the European Commission in Canada as part of the Global Fund replenishment. In addition, we also saw 5 companies sign on to the UN-led Race to Zero, pledging to reach net zero emissions by 2050. The event featured 10 hours of live performances, activism, and announcements made by the public, private, and philanthropic sectors. And there's a full YouTube live stream of this if you guys want to check it out. I'm happy to send out a link if anyone's interested. While we had a lot of exciting commitments come in, I want to hone in specifically on those made specifically for girls and to education. We had a total of 10 commitments and $148 million announced for girls. They're all listed here on the screen between both governments and the philanthropic and private sector. On education specifically, though, just because we don't have enough time to get into all of these, we had CEO of the Lego Foundation and Brigade stand alongside Yasmin Sharif, Executive Director of Education Cannot Wait, where the Lego Foundation announced a commitment of $25 million towards ECW's replenishment next year. And then in addition to that, Germany, who's already a huge champion of education, announced an additional 10 million euros towards ECW for their replenishment. And I won't play this video, but it is on YouTube if anyone's interested.
Hello, global citizens.
Sorry. In addition to this, as part of our campaign in the lead up to the festival, our amazing talent team was able to facilitate some tweets from the Jonas Brothers, Mariah Carey, and Rachel Brosnahan, who all tweeted in support of ECW and the 222 Million Dreams campaign. More specifically, we had the Jonas Brothers and Rachel Brosnahan call on Samantha Power, specifically calling on her to pledge 50 million for the US towards ECW's replenishment. So we're hoping that this will come through closer to the time in February. We weren't able to do anything in time for our own festival, but there's still time for the replenishment. And then the ECW 222 Million Dreams campaign. As you all know, ECW is hosting their replenishment in February of next year, where they hope to raise $1.5 billion. So we'll be continuing to campaign for them throughout the year and working with them over the coming months. As part of our education campaign, in addition to this, we also have a number of actions on our website, including ones that target world leaders. So they encourage you to sign a petition, to tweet, or to write a letter. And then we also have a few soft actions encouraging our global citizens to learn more about the importance of education, about ECW's work, and submit short answers and videos that will be turned into a content piece for our website. In addition to the commitments that were announced on our stage, we also put together a short little video case study on our work in education over the last 10 years since the very first festival. So this had clips from Rihanna's work with us over the last 10 years on education. And then a team of ours went to Colombia where they carried out a little case study on the work that ECW does there. I won't show the video, but again, I can send it to anyone who's interested. And then outside of the festival, Global Citizen was also present at the Transforming Education Summit earlier in September, and we supported the Let Me Learn campaign. As part of the summit, Global Citizen produced a video that highlighted ECW's 222 Million Dreams campaign. It was short snippets asking our global citizens why education mattered to them and why it was important towards reaching their dreams. We put this together into this short 1.5-minute video that was shared at the summit and shared across our social media. So you can see here what the action was. So our global citizens were encouraged to submit a video on this, and then we turned it into the video you can see on the left. And then that's kind of all from me. Over the next few months, we'll be prioritizing ECW's replenishment, and we plan to have an in-person presence from our leadership in Switzerland in February. And we'll be working closely with priority governments in the private sector ahead of that to mobilize as many commitments as possible. Beyond ECW, our work over the next year is going to continue to focus on girls' education, as that's a key pillar of our work to ending extreme poverty. If you have any questions or if you want to collaborate in any way, I'll put my email in the chat box and you can feel free to reach out to me. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Zane, for sharing, and thank you for the wonderful work and advocacy you're doing. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for dropping your email. Please reach out, anyone else, if you're interested in Zane's work, and let's continue the conversation in the chat box. Next up, I am excited to introduce our colleague Marie Lichtenberg, who works for Planet Aid. She serves as the Director of International Partnerships. And so I will just pull up the next set of slides to share. We're excited to hear about Planet Aid's work on promoting gender equality and education for girls. Thank you, Marie, for being here. Oh. There we go. Marie, I can't hear you on my end. Maybe you just need to press the unmute button. There we go.
There we go. Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer and Krista and everyone on the Global Campaign for Education team. You're doing a fantastic job. And I'm happy to share with you today, in honor of the International Day of the Girl, on this panel. So let's go straight to it. You can change the slide. So just to begin, who are we? Planet Aid is US. I'm the Director for International Partnerships, and Planet Aid is the US member of the HPP Federation. And that's a network of 29 local independent organizations. We work in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. And on a global scale, we impact around 12 million people. through 1,200 projects, and it's across all the sectors. So education, health, agriculture, climate change, etc. Girls' education is, of course, a critical pillar, and it's a focus of ours. You can say it's a journey of lifelong learning, and for us it begins at preschool level and it continues through college level and beyond. You will see in the presentation the depth and the different angles to girls' education that we implement on the ground. Next slide. Girls' education, it's a driver to meet all SDGs. Why girls' education is critical. We don't need to talk about here. Everybody in this meeting knows it and advocates for it. So I will go to the next slide. What we do, HPP local members, we reach around 600,000 girls and young women in education every year. And one of the points I want to make is most of our programs are co-educational. So they build the next generation of boys and girls learning together as equals. Now, this is important. We do have programs that specifically target girls and girls' education, transitioning from primary to secondary school, etc. All very, very critical. But also at large number of programs we have works both with boys and girls to make them equals and to be sure that we educate everyone. It's about lifelong learning. We work at all the levels. From preschool, we train teachers. We run early childhood education programs. We have a model called Preschools of the Future. We train teachers. We educate a cadre of young female teachers skilled to teach in rural areas, in rural schools where the need is greatest. We also do entrepreneurship courses and resources and provide resources for young women to start up their own businesses. And then we do, last but not least, vocational training of young girls and women and building their skills for job security and for them to build their own future. Next slide. Our approach to inclusive and lifelong learning, I want to make 4 points come through here. We see girls and young women as drivers of their own education and progress. And it takes a curriculum to make sure that happens. It takes a lot of thought, and all the programs from preschool to primary to secondary to college level, we design those programs for the girls and the young women to become drivers of change. Number 2, engaging boys as champions for girls' education and empowerment. As I mentioned earlier, very critical to include the boys in every step of the way. Number 3, understanding that it takes a collective effort to ensure that girls complete school and transition to the next level. And number 4 is important. We do design cost-effective, sustainable, and scalable models. And you will see an example of that in a few minutes. So I'll get back to that when we get to India. Next slide. On the teacher training, in the teacher training area, we operate 48 teacher training colleges. And we have so far graduated around 57,000 young teachers. About half of them are female, impacting around 2.8 million students annually. And on the right side, you can see where those colleges are located. These are brick and mortar colleges. They are a partnership between the local HPP members and the ministries of education to really drive the question about quality for all in the space of teacher training. So these are pre-service teacher training colleges, and the women and men who graduate gets a certificate from the government and are then employed after graduation by the ministries. Next slide. In vocational training, we educate young women in construction, agriculture, business administration, and environmentally focused jobs, green jobs. Next slide. Mozambique is one example of where we are very active and have been so for many years. The local HPP member just celebrated its 40th birthday last week. For Mozambique, we as Planet Aid have been involved and engaged in 25 years now. Just a quick background on Mozambique, you can see 94% of girls in Mozambique enroll in primary school, less than 50% complete basic education, a little more than 19 continue to secondary level, and then only 1% continue on to enroll in college. So this is the precondition in Mozambique. Based on these facts and the challenges emerging in Mozambique, we as Planet Aid have managed a comprehensive USDA-funded McGovern-Dole Food for Education program with ADPP Mozambique as our local partner. I will not say more about Mozambique. I will leave the slides on and skip the next slide and go to India, because just in interest of time. Yes, India. The Kadam model, stepping up. Kadam is Hindi and means stepping up in English. There we are supporting an 11-month accelerated learning program for vulnerable girls and boys in India, grade 1 to 5. And we are targeting both out of school and also children in school with specific learning challenges. We break with tradition by teaching, by introducing participatory methods and also combining theory and practice. We enhance peer education and active learning by working in small teams throughout the program. Next slide. The model is sustainable and scalable. I'm coming back to that. Actually, the government of India is leveraging the program with 50 to 70% of the resources needed to implement. This is, of course, a very important question when you talk about programming. Are they sustainable? We work with the government at national and at state level to make sure that everybody is not just supporting the model, but backs it up with resources. In the model, children, they learn progressively at their own pace, and teachers are trained in how to use tested and proven learning toolkits. And now we go to the next slide, and I will, let's see here. Yeah, here is just a quick slide about our partnership with RIST, Rural India Supporting Trust, between HPP India and RIST. This program or this partnership has graduated over 50,000 Kadam students since 2019. 50% of them are girls, and then gender equity is integrated throughout the program model by boys and girls learning together with equal responsibility and respect. And the examples of the outcomes are significant. 75% of the out-of-school children reach their age-appropriate learning level by the end of the program, and 96% of Kadam children continued in school 2 years after the program ended. Next slide. And here I will just show you a very quick video clip from the program in India, just to get the reality into the presentation. Go ahead, Krista. The sound will be coming in a minute.
मेरे घर में सर आए थे, मम्मी पापा से बात करी तो उन्होंने नाम लिखवाया था। पहले टेस्ट हुआ, फिर कदम मिली, फिर हमने पहले बन मिली थी, फिर हम दूसरी बनना, मतलब जल्दी जल्दी देखते थे 3 ग्रुप में तो जल्दी से हम आगे बढ़ जाएं। तो फिर आगे बढ़े, हम दूसरी पे आ गए थे, फिर हमें मन लगने लगा पढ़ाई में। फिर दूसरी क्लास में सवाल जोड़ घटाने गुणा भाग खेल ही खेल में सीख गए थे। मम्मी पापा पढ़े नहीं तो बच्चों को भविष्य बनाने के लिए सोचना है कि पढ़ाना जरूरी है। अगर पढ़ेंगे नहीं तो उनकी जिंदगी खराब होगी, आगे चल के परेशानी पड़ेगी उनको। मार्कशीट मिल गई है, 5 की मार्कशीट मिल गई तो दूसरे स्कूल में दाखिल करा दिया है। हमने अपने घर में नहीं बिठाना, क्यों बिठाना? जब यहाँ से पढ़ चुके हैं तो वहाँ क्यों? सबसे छोटी रोजी है वो पढ़ रही है।
Go to the next slide. We'll get the next slide just in 1 second. Krista is, yeah. Lessons learned. So this was just a quick clip from the girls' education and boys' education program we do in India. Just a quick summary of lessons learned that I want to share with you. One thing is include issues that affect the girls and their quality of life as an important part of the education curriculum. The dialectics of learning subject matter and testing the new learning in practice is building confidence and capacity to take action. And number 3 is securing an enabling environment within the community at large. So important. Girls, the boys, girls, men, local leaders as champions for girls' rights. Organize girls into groups, ensuring peer support from day one. We have seen that organizing girls into groups and learning together is critical. And then the last point is longer-term girls' education programs produce deeper results and impact. And I know you all know this, but these were quickly the lessons learned for girls' education and the programming of local members of Humana People to People and with support from Planet Aid.
Thanks so much, Marie, for sharing all the great work that Planet Aid is doing. I see that in the chat, there are a few questions. Please keep them coming. And Marie, if you would be able to kindly answer them via chat, that would be great. Without further ado, we are glad to introduce Linda Eunice, the Program Associate for Raising Teenagers Uganda and a focal lead for the Inclusive Education Working Group at the UNESCO SDG 4 Youth Network, which is the a major youth group that's been leading fantastic work behind the scenes throughout the Transforming Education Summit process. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Annie. I request to mute my video, if that's okay. Perfect. I hope everybody can hear me. Well, I'll start with Raising Teenagers Uganda, an organization I work for in Uganda. One of the things we're doing to ensure that girls with disabilities access education, stay in school and complete, because I don't want us only focus about the enrollment, but also emphasize issues to do with retention and completion. One of the things we're doing is we understand that when we talk about disability inclusion and access to education, most organizations are focusing on the physical disability, someone with vision impairment, hearing impairment, but we decided to look at children with dyslexia, a learning disability. And we understand that many children are either labeled stupid, dumb, or not understanding in class because of dyslexia, because our teachers have not been trained in the teaching training colleges to identify this learning disability. The parents have not been trained to identify and support these children with this learning disability. So as an organization, what we're doing right now is to train teachers in identification of dyslexia, to train parents on how to identify dyslexia and support children to read, write, and spell, because dyslexia affects the ability of children to read, to write, and spell. And if children are not able to do that, they're not able to compose sentences, to read in class, they're not able to sit for exams. And that is why we are having many children drop out of school because of that. So as an organization, we are focusing on that. And then also we formed parent support groups because in Uganda and most of the African countries, I must say, when you have a child with disability, you're either labeled caste. So to break the stigma and just create a community where parents of children with disabilities can socialize, share experiences, and learn from one another is one of the tools that has really helped us in breaking stigma in the communities, but also encourage parents to not lose hope, to invest in their children, to take them to school, because access to education for children with disabilities is a human right. And I always emphasize that in every space I get an opportunity to speak at. We're also working with government. One of the things we noticed is there's a provision at Ministry of Education. For example, if a child has dyslexia, they can, in an examination, sit with somebody to help them out. Unfortunately, most parents do not know this. So it's hard. That's why most students drop out of school. If parents knew this and teachers knew this, they would support children to stay in school and learn, because reading, whether you're 20 or 15 or 30, is a human right, I must say. Children with disabilities or dyslexia should be supported to read at any age, to learn how to read, write, and spell at any age. But besides that, besides the disability aspect of it, we have a project aimed at fighting child marriages, and that is amongst children with disabilities, girls with disabilities, and those without. Oftentimes, when we say end child marriages, most of the research available does not disaggregate the data in terms of disability. How many of those girls that are married off young have disability? Generalizing it does not actually bring out the severity of the issue. Many girls in Uganda with disability have been married off young because they're not taken to school. So parents think, okay, yeah, she can get married when she reaches 15. And that is not okay. Many girls got pregnant during COVID-19. Many girls with disability got pregnant during COVID-19. But again, if you're to Google the statistics, you won't find them. They don't specify how many girls with disabilities got pregnant during COVID-19. And yet this directly affects their education. If a girl with disability was in school and then during COVID-19 got pregnant, that means she did go back to school. And not much efforts have been put in place by the government to ensure that these girls with disabilities are able to continue learning. And so that's why we come in as an organization, besides advocacy, engaging parliamentarians to show them that these girls deserve to be in school, regardless of their disability, because they are girls first, and then the disability just comes in later. So the mere fact that they're human beings, they're girls, they deserve to be in school. So that's one of the things we're doing. We are again working with local religious and cultural leaders, because we understand that issues to do with child marriages are a cultural issue, if I must say. So we're working with these institutions to ensure that girls with disabilities that have been married off young, that have gotten pregnant, are able to go back to school. In regards to the Inclusive Education Working Group at UNESCO, what we're doing right now, or what we plan to do, is to write a policy brief on inclusive education, leveraging the power of young people. We believe that youth have the power to promote inclusive education in their communities. But we see that there's a lack of capacity building, there's lack of opportunities for young people to competently either share their ideas on how they can promote inclusive education. There's lack of funding for youth-led initiatives in regards to promoting inclusive education. So we want this policy brief from the Inclusive Education Working Group at the UNESCO SDG for Youth Network to focus on that. How do we engage young people? How do we engage youth in promoting inclusive education from the grassroots to the national level and the world, of course, and the international level? So those are some of the things we're doing to ensure that we promote inclusive education in our communities. And finally, one of the things I want to highlight here is funding, the need to fund inclusive education. Oftentimes we've talked about, during transforming education, there's a whole action track on financing education. And not many organizations, again, were really emphasizing the need to fund inclusive education. And yet it's critical. if you're talking about achieving sustainable development goal 4 or leaving no one behind, Agenda 2030, we need to emphasize financing for inclusive education. We need to stop generalizing, because we understand that challenges affecting persons with disabilities or girls with disabilities are not the same as those affecting anybody without a disability. Yes, they're general challenges, but we need to be specific in addressing specific challenges that are affecting access to education for girls with disabilities. So one of the things we're doing as well is advocacy and working with parliamentarians to ensure that there is increased financing for girls' education. Thank you so much. I will appreciate any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of your amazing work and leadership. And that's the perfect tie-in. We're really thrilled that coming off of the World Bank IMF annual meetings in Washington, DC, the Honorable Neema Lugangira, Member of Parliament in Tanzania, who's also the founder of 2 NGOs, Agri Thamani and Omuka Hub, is here to join us. We realize that her time is limited, and so we're grateful to all of you for joining across time zones, across countries and regions today. You can see her full bio and that was shared earlier. She's also the founding chair of the Parliamentary Network on the World Bank and IMF in Tanzania, and she is a member and leader within the International Parliamentary Network on Education, a Vital Voices Fellow, among many other things. So we're really thrilled that she could join us here today to share the work that she's doing, especially on the last mile for girls' education and related topics, and hope that this is an opportunity for people to connect and join up. Over to you, Honorable MP.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful, we can see you now.
Can you all hear me? Okay,
Yes,
so basically,
loud and clear.
Thank you. So I'm in Berlin attending the World Health Summit, and I've managed to find a quiet corner. The quotes locker for the quotes. So if you see many quotes, don't panic.
We're not seeing your video, but we are hearing you. So please go ahead. We know how challenging it can be sometimes. I'm going to stop the video to see if that maybe helps with the audio. Can you hear us, Neema?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Go ahead.
I was saying, so did you want me to just carry on, or?
Yes, if you wanted to. It sounded like. Absolutely, please, if you wanted to share key information, some highlights from your work. We're especially focusing on girls' education, as you know, building on International Day of the Girl last week. And you have a wonderful array of partners from around the globe joining by Zoom as well.
Okay, so as you introduced, my name is Neema Lugangira. I'm a member of parliament in Tanzania. But out of my personal priorities as a parliamentarian, I have 5 main priorities. First one is food and nutrition security. Second one is digital inclusion, digital development. Third one is community health. Fourth one is gender equality in politics. And the 5th one is strengthening the NGO sector, because my constituency is I'm representing the NGO sector through our ruling party, CCM. Now, when it comes to education, I'm particularly passionate about education because I myself, having been raised by a single parent who didn't have much, but she dedicated all that she had in making sure that I have a good education. And it's that good education that has enabled me to be here today. So I understand firsthand the power of information, of education, sorry. And alongside that, I also understand the power that education can have to ensure that girls and women don't remain in abusive relationships or don't remain in circumstances that are abusive in any nature, because you can always know that there is a way out if you're well educated. But if you're not, then it means sometimes you're forced to remain in those unfortunate circumstances because you don't see a way out. And I come from a peripheral region called Kagera, which borders Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. So it's quite interesting that I'm speaking after my colleague from Uganda. And coming from a peripheral region that is highly malnourished, we host the largest actual number of stunted children under 5 are in Kagera. We also host amongst the regions with the highest level of anemia in women in reproductive age, that is between the age of 15 to 49. But at the same time, we're unfortunately amongst the regions that are the lower quartile of poverty line because of our GDP contribution. And all of those things made me be interested in our education sector. So what I did in 2018, I set up an NGO, Agri Samani Foundation. Agri for agriculture, Samani means value. And the aim of that is to see how can we use the agriculture sector to add value and contribute to efforts towards ending malnutrition. And my immediate focus, which is a focus until today, is to work in schools. So we work in primary schools and secondary schools. These are public owned, and we focus on providing nutrition education to the students, both male and female. But at the same time, we also provide starting up vegetable gardens in schools, and also vegetable gardens at household level, and using these adolescents as champions. Now, alongside that, we came to realize that school meals in Tanzania are not, it's still a challenge. Not all public schools provide meals, and the very few that provide meals is not nutritious. So we started a campaign, an advocacy campaign, on making sure how can our government prioritize school meals. But to do that, we need to have the right enabling environment. So one of our key achievements was getting the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology to set up national school feeding guidelines. And just this year in September, before I think about a few days before the UN General Assembly, Tanzania signed up to join the School Meals Coalition. So those are some of our achievements that we're most proud of. But now it's the question of what next? How do we then go forward to implement and make sure that indeed in schools there will be school meals provided? Second thing is, coming from a peripheral region, there is a challenge of access to sanitary pads for rural girls. This is something that may not be thought of, but I've been trying to work on an initiative to make sure that girls do not miss school because of being on their period, because they cannot afford sanitary wear. So last year I was able to get some funding and distributed sanitary pads that covered their entire year for girls who were in their Form 2 and Form 4. These are two grades in secondary education that they go through national exams. But this year, I was not able to do that. I was not able to get the funding, so we were not able to do that. Now, what did that teach me? That taught me that this intervention needs to be sustainable. So right now, the support that I'm trying to look for, and I'm hoping maybe through this call, there may be potential partners to work with, is to come up with a tailoring mat, where at the community level, get women at the community level, get also girls at the community level to produce reusable and washable sanitary pads, because this can be sustainable, and it can be, and we will not find ourselves in the same situation that we found ourselves this year, because we're not able to get the funding. So we are hoping to come up. We've already done some preliminary preliminary concept, to just be very realistic, to start with a very small tailoring mats that will enable us to produce sanitary pads, so that we can ensure, if we're going to pick a select number of schools, all the girls will be able to be supported and it can be sustainable. So that's on the second issue of access to sanitary pads. The other issue is digital inclusion. As we all know, there's a huge digital gender divide, but for peripheral regions, it's even worse, the digital gender divide. And we need to make strategic efforts of how do we promote school connectivity, because most of our schools in peripheral regions are not connected. COVID was a very good example. In Tanzania, we did not have lockdown, but our schools closed. And when the schools closed, students in public schools were not able to learn because the schools are not connected. And even where they try to connect, the teachers, the students themselves do not have the digital skills and literacy of how to use these tools. So then that it becomes very important then for us to find mechanisms of making sure that we also have digital interventions. And this is what led me to set up the second NGO, Omuka Hub. Omuka means home. Omuka Hub, which focuses on accelerating digital inclusion in peripheral regions. Because what I noted is a lot of efforts on digital development, digital inclusion are focusing on urban areas and not necessarily peripheral regions. So those are the three key areas that I can share right now. And it is my sincere hope that we can be able to find synergies and areas of working together. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining and literally finding whatever location might have a little bit of quiet to do so. And thank you, Marie, Linda, colleagues who are sharing more resources in the chat. We're so grateful for all that you're doing. And all, please share your ideas and response and any questions that you might have in the chat box as well. We're going to quickly go to announcements. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Stephanie Pena, our Inclusive Education Coordinator, and we want to hear from all of you, announcements, ideas, things that you have coming up as well. Thank you to all of you. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone. Fantastic presentations today. Just wanted to make an announcement. I see there's a lot of engagement in the chat regarding education, especially related to children with disabilities. Which is really great. We want to continue those conversations and wanted to announce that we have our next Inclusive Education and Early Childhood Community of Practice meeting, which will be held in honor of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. But we'll be having the meeting on December 7th at 9 a.m., I believe. Thank you, Jennifer, for putting the information on how to join the community of practice. She'll also be putting in a link for the registration as well. If you join our community of practice, we're able to send you emails, add you to our listserv, and keep you updated on any information related to our community of practice, our members, and our future meetings. So we welcome you to join and also encourage you to register for our meeting on the 7th. If you have any ideas or any suggestions for speakers, or if there's any tools that you would like to present at a future community of practice, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll put my email in the chat as well. Over to you, Krista.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that. Just to add that the Global Campaign for Education World Assembly is coming up on November 22nd through 24th, excuse me. And the deadline to register is October 31st. We'll include the link to that in the chat as well. We also wanted to let you know that in addition to these meetings, we do have that happen every month. We have monthly newsletters that our wonderful colleagues Annie Lynn and Karina Anton Lopez lead on. And we're glad to sign you up, or you can sign yourself up by clicking on the link on the chat to get future action alerts and links to our work that's happening every month. We're also so glad to have you in the Global Campaign for Education US Coalition. Your work is vital to our collective efforts to promote inclusive quality education, and we're so grateful to have your partnership. If you or someone you know, a colleague, is interested in joining the Global Campaign for Education US Coalition, please do have them email us. They can email me directly at cgiesica@gceus.org. We'll put the link to that email address in the chat. But we'd also love to know if you or your organizations are planning to host any upcoming events related to international education or advocacy. Please let us know. And thank you all for joining and being patient today with the technological challenges. We appreciate you and the work you're doing to promote girls' education, inclusive education, and further opportunities for all children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and please continue to share your announcements, your advocacy, your partnership, your ideas for collaboration. Thank you so much to all of you, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.